that's moving. Responsible. Credit.
Sometimes things like that, names of software just make sense. Like good technology.
Yep. Yeah, unfortunately, we had to do that.
Right? I'm waiting for the company to come out with better technology. Nobody. So your company's mediocre? Yeah, pretty much. So, we're going to talk about SharePoint, and I'll let you go first.
Alright, so I'm James Jardine. I guess I'll use this if nobody can hear me. It sounds much worse on a microphone. Sorry. James Sparty, I'm Principal Security Consultant at Secure Ideas. I do all kinds of nonsense there because Kevin makes me do it. So sometimes SharePoint, sometimes everything. Also a SAMS instructor and author for the Dev 544 Secure Coding in .NET class. Podcaster. So I do the Professional Evil Perspective on Kevin's podcast, which he seems to take credit for. As well as Down the Rabbit Hole with Raphael Loos, which is kind of fun.
This is his podcast, not James.
Yeah, that's not my podcast, sorry. All of the Professionally Evil Perspective, the episodes. That's mine. Blogs, I have my own, really focusing on .NET security, so if you're interested in .NET security topics, I encourage you to check it out. It's at jardinesoftware.net. And I also blog regularly on the Secure Ideas blog, and I also have a couple tools out there for open source.
Nerd.
Kevin.
You didn't edit this one.
No,
I'm so disappointed. I was waiting.
I'm the first one.
Just the first one. So, I'm Kevin. I'm a nerd. I hate talking about myself. I founded Secure Ideas. I'm the CEO, which is a really fancy way to say head nerd. I run the technical side of it. Laura and Denise do the operations and the business and the important stuff. I'm also a course author and instructor. I teach with SANS. I've written their web pen testing curriculum. I do a lot of cool stuff there. I'm a podcaster also, even though it's on James's podcast, Professional Evil Perspective. IANS faculty. I used to say I was an open source bigot, and then somebody pointed out to me, Laura actually, pointed out to me that sounded inappropriate. And I said, what part of pen tester doesn't sound inappropriate? But, so I was told that I should say open source fanatic. It's a sign that I need an intervention because currently I don't remember how many open source projects exactly I'm running. And since we're releasing a couple today, well, that number went up. Right? And so everything from Samurai WTF, which stands for Web Testing Framework, all you dirty-minded people. And I'm a hacker, right? So I say. I don't actually hack anymore. I have minions for that, as I found out this morning. As a side note, by the way, this talk is not going to be about SharePoint. We're going to be on tangents the entire time. I get up this morning, we rented a house, the whole consulting arm of Secure Ideas is there, we're hanging out. Everybody, and I didn't notice the fact that nobody looked away from me the entire time we were in the house. Then, we go to walk to get breakfast, and I noticed after about an hour of this, I noticed, Jason, come on up, let's show everybody your hit. No, that Jason, the one who started it. We have two Jasons in the company.
To the stage.
Yeah, to the stage. Come on. This is Jason Wood. This is what I got seeing this morning. Everybody in the company is wearing Kevin Johnson's entourage. I am not worthy. What the hell?
And he did not notice.
At all.
The entire morning. I mean, it was at least an hour. I was walking around Louisville. And there was actually a guy at the corner of the crosswalk who said, "Are you that race car driver?"
No, I drive fast. I know, but not that fast. Right? So, I don't know what that is. In case you didn't know what it was, we'll go back. Right? So today, we're going to talk about some weird stuff. We're going to talk about SharePoint. We all like that. Some common problems we find with SharePoint. We're going to talk about the current testing tools, because there are, surprising to some, current testing tools. We're also then going to talk about SPScan, which is focused on scanning, well, SharePoint. It's kind of funny, but it's focused on scanning something else, which is stayed in there. The front page, it's one front page. And then the beef module. Notice it doesn't have a name. The reason it doesn't have a name is because James came up with this dumb one.
Don't believe that.
Somehow in our outline, the beef module is called the beef buffet, and neither of us remember writing that, but it's in the outline, and it's the stupidest name possible, right? But we haven't come up with a better one yet. So that might be a contest today, if you can come up with a better one, right?
Where's the beef?
No, we're not calling it Where's the Beef. First, it's a trademark. Second off, neither of us are little cranky old ladies.
We're not far.
Not far. Not far. So
We see SharePoint everywhere, right? I mean, as we raised our hands in here, everybody has seen SharePoint. I mean, 2 people living under rocks, but everybody else has seen SharePoint. They're using SharePoint. Right, it's been around for a long time. It was released back in 2001 by Microsoft. It's gone through multiple versions. Now we have the 2013 version that's available out there for us. Right? I mean, there's a lot of it available to us. A lot of users have access to it, and it holds a lot of our information.
by the way, the 1 of 3 enterprise users, 2 of them are here, right? So, we just want to point out, it says up here, according to Microsoft. Now, I want to be clear, because we don't want to be those plagiarizers or whatever. We could not find anything from Microsoft that said how many people use SharePoint or how much stuff they've got for SharePoint in the quick search we did. Yes, we know. Let me Google that for you. And we found a page that said, according to Microsoft, but they didn't link to where Microsoft said it. We just said, should we put it in? Yeah,
It wasn't Wikipedia.
It wasn't Wikipedia.
It must have been valid.
Well, no, Wikipedia is true. Every time I edit it, I'm right. So, SharePoint is way more than most people think. A lot of people look at SharePoint and say, well, it's basically where I put my documents. It's basically to share some stuff with people. It is an entire web platform with business engines and all this kind of cool stuff. And when you start looking at the different versions and editions, right, you start out, I mean, how many people here remember SharePoint Portal Server? Or SharePoint Team Services, right? Yeah, we're old. Just so you know.
Early adopters.
Early adopters is a nice way to put that. I like old. I feel old. I do. So, it's the first time my wife reached over and grabbed a white cat hair off of me and pulled it. It wasn't the cat hair. That hurt. We've got all the different versions, right, all the way up to, as James said, to 2013. But most of the ones we see currently are 2007, which, by the way, is over 6 years old, and 2013. That's right. Damn it. When I typed the slide, I did that too. It's 2010. And then, of course, you've got the different editions. You've got the foundations, the standard, and the enterprise. And these provide different levels of features. Foundations, for the people who don't know, is the first taste of crack. Microsoft, the drug dealer, gives it away for free, right? It's pretty much installed everywhere. I found a Linux box with mine. But, if you use a real operating system, SharePoint will run. But then you start moving up from there with standard and then enterprise, right? Adding things like the business analytics, business engine, the search, and stuff like that. Everything we're going to talk about today works, well, almost everything works at all levels. The only one that really drops off anything we talk about today is Foundations, right? Because Foundations is really limited as to what it can do, okay? Makes sense?
So why is it that it doesn't work on Linux? Because Linux treats you like an adult?
Yes.
So that's why I use Windows?
That's what the guy said.
I stole that quote from Aaron Cure, sorry. He's not here, but I'll at least give him credit for it because that's not how I roll.
And then of course we have SharePoint Apps. These used to be called web parts, right? Microsoft is now calling them SharePoint Apps, which I find funny because of all the cool things we've done with Facebook apps. Which, by the way, Facebook wall. Because that's what you want on your enterprise server, right? I like even better that for SharePoint 2013 Enterprise, you can get Icon has cheeseburgers. Yeah.
Which is funny because that cat is on Tom's shirt.
Yeah, the chef's right there, right? His sushi cat. You approve? Yeah. So, by the way, how many people here, all the people who are in SharePoint, how many of you had the Icon has cheeseburgers app for SharePoint?
How many people have a way to know that you have?
That's a good question. That's a better question, right? And these apps or web parts add a lot of the functionality that people use. They're extensions, right? They make SharePoint do cool stuff without you having to write the hard code, right? It's not that hard, but if you follow the tutorials, your code will be insecure, so that's good. We recommend strongly that you follow every tutorial Microsoft has placed and as much information on Stack Overflow as possible. Because what we found is all of those sources are amazingly secure coding guidelines, right? It makes it really, really good for us. But,
That's where I get my code from.
it is, I am a Google coder. I Google something and I cut and paste the code into SVN. But these are add-ons, and we pointed out these three mainly because, let's be honest, all the people in the room that raised their hand for SharePoint, that you run SharePoint, how many of you run SharePoint, or your organization runs SharePoint, for your users to put business documents in, sensitive documents in, right? As we'll talk about in a bit, we regularly find passwords stored in SharePoint, right? I was able to steal 170,000 social security numbers from a company because their SharePoint system had a document that had all the passwords to connect to the databases, and I connected into this one database that had 170,000 employees' data, including social security numbers, due to SharePoint. Now that SharePoint server, well, it's due to the user. Let's not blame the software for the idiot that you have that's still drooling at a waste of carbon. But, you know how many pencils we could make if all the dumb people's carbon was taken back into the environment? But, on that same server that had those, I almost said pencils, had those passwords, right? If they installed I Can Has Cheeseburgers, because nothing against the I Can Has Cheeseburgers guys, but I don't think that's what we want in SharePoint, right?
It's spelled right.
I mean, I don't even know what's going on with that right now. But this is exactly what we see as we start getting into SharePoint servers. We start doing simple things where we find just an immense amount of information that's just sitting out there for the taking. I mean, as we go in and do tests, we're looking for passwords, we're looking for all this stuff to be able to easily access stuff. And the documents that people store are just sitting out there unprotected, and it's just opening all up for the ability to lose data. And it's unbelievable how often we get in with simple stuff like finding stuff on shares, SharePoint server, all these different CMS options that are out there.
Yeah, because that is a valid thing to keep in mind. If we're picking on SharePoint right now, right? Long live Microsoft. They make my job easier. Not as easier as Adobe has. Not as easier as Adobe has made it, right?
This is trying to get you on the mic.
I appreciate that. Microsoft has gotten way better than Oracle and Adobe. But, so let's talk about some of the common issues we've got, right? Hey, you guys hear about the 0 day in Adobe that came out today? Don't worry, one will. But, all of the versions we run, right, they have common issues. These issues come up, they're shown. We see them all the time, even when, you know, and I always laugh when people say this to me, I've hardened my SharePoint server. And then I always want to say to them, so does that make it a selfish point server? And they don't get it. That's okay. But even when they're hardened, most of the issues that we find are still found. Why? Because we're abusing the features of that server. It's designed to do what we want it to do. It just wasn't designed to do it for hacksaws, right? Or when your employee gets to be gruntled and moves into disgruntled mode and starts taking stuff out, right? So we find all these things. We have 4 different groups we're going to talk about: improper permissions, default pages, vulnerabilities themselves, and content issues. Which of course means we want to make sure that you don't forget all the typical issues, right? SQL injection, command injection, cross-site scripting, because SharePoint has had all of those as well.
Yeah, and when we start talking about improper permissions, right? I mean, these are things that we're seeing as we start. Did you just skip slides on me?
Okay,
thanks. I appreciate that.
Wait,
This is what happens when I let them control the clicker.
whoa. I seem to remember somebody using the entire section.
Okay, so I did. I skipped the entire section once. It was a mess up on my part. So improper permissions, right? I mean, as we go in and set this up, we let users define who's going to be doing permissions. We go in, we don't properly set all of our permissions on all of our pages so we can get access to these sites, right? And as testers, we come in and we have to test this. I mean, who does testing that doesn't go out and actually try to see, okay, I'm a read-only user, can I try to access admin pages? And so oftentimes people go in, they set these things up, they put data in there, and then it's open to the entire world, right? Oh, hey, this is my IT department share, but I've got it open so, you know, the person in customer service can come in and log in and view my documents, right, that hold the connections to all of our databases.
Tim Tomes made it. So, yeah, I know. So, one of the things that we find all the time when we point this out to people is it's always a case of, I had this data, Sue in accounting needed access to it, and I didn't know what group she was in, so I just put everyone there. But nobody really wants it, right? Nobody will look at it, nobody will find it. They gotta, no, we found it. Oh. Then they freak out, right? Because we're able to abuse it and start playing around with things. And finding this, very manual process. Very manual process, right? Because automated tools, which can find data, right? Hey, you've got data here, but how does that automated tool know that that data is sensitive? How does that automated tool know that that data can be used for cool stuff by us, right? So that's where it becomes very, very manual. You have to start looking for things. As a matter of fact, sometimes we actually find when we search for stuff that we can't access the content, but we can access the title of the content because we don't have permission to the content itself, but the search results brings it back. We can actually get a lot of information from the title. I have found documents that have said, right, the title of the document was username equals this, password equals this. Because the person wrote in the first line of Word and said save, and save defaulted to the first line being the title, and they went, oh, okay, and put it up on the server, right? It's kind of fun.
Yeah, we do see a lot going in the description, right? So when we do our searching, right, this is one of the first things that we do is go in and search for things like password or connection string or any of this stuff where shares are set up, any permission-related stuff. We search SharePoint for this, and even if we don't have access, it still gives us a little bit of information, and sometimes that information is enough to get us into what we need to get into. So the next thing we have is default pages. Everybody loves a system that comes with default pages. Right? Not too many systems out there don't come with nice default pages that we can just access and nobody takes away any access to them. So this is a common problem with SharePoint. There's a whole list of default pages that exist out there that we can get access to if somebody doesn't go in and actually handle dealing with these pages.
Not only can we get access to it, but a lot of times even if they have locked it down, if you install a specific SharePoint app, I'm still not used to that whole, it's not web app parts anymore, but if you install a certain SharePoint app, inside the app, they re-enable that default page, right? It's like, for example, there's a default page that will list all of Active Directory, all of the users, all of the stuff like that, and you can lock that down. But then you install a web part that has a contact portion, and you click on the contact portion, and lists that entire default page. There's all the Active Directory users. And so even though the admin, the organization, the victim was, I guess we should call that more often, right, the victim, but they tried to harden it, which in my opinion actually makes this somewhat worse because they left thinking, I did my job, I did my due diligence, I made this safer, right? When the reality was they didn't. But because they thought they did, they stopped monitoring for stuff like that, or they didn't pay attention to the stuff out there. And a person like us would come in there and say, okay, let's see what's in. Oh, here's all these users we can social engineer. Here's all these people we can contact. Here's all this content we can see. Here's an org chart. So now I know that Susan Allen is the head of HR. And so when I call somebody up and say, I'm Susan Allen's administrative assistant, and rattle off the name, right? I've got the information I need. We're having this problem with, Denise Johnson, who is over in accounting, and she has a problem she needs fixed, and I need to fix it for you, and blah, 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 and we get all this stuff from organization terms, right? That SharePoint exposes for us, right? I don't understand PowerPoint keeps putting that in. Yeah, it's weird. But, no, that's not my birthday. It says the cake is a lie. I don't know. It's weird. But then we start talking about I didn't put SharePoint apps in there. Damn. So we start talking about the vulnerabilities, right? And SharePoint has had a number of them. The web parts, the apps have had a number of them. For example, Microsoft was actually featuring Facebook and Twitter integrations for SharePoint. We pulled them down, they were free, we pulled them down and looked at the source code. Both of them were vulnerable to things like cross-site scripting, SQL injection, command execution. And they were being featured by Microsoft. Now, I want to be clear, Microsoft did not create them, right? Microsoft didn't build them. And that's a problem, right? So we start to look at those. And then we have content issues.
It's okay.
Okay.
I was just going to point out that it did mention also on there that in 2010, we also have stuff, we have to contend with .NET protections. I take that a little to heart because I've been a .NET developer for years. So I like to talk about the .NET protections. I'm not going to here, but they exist. If you want to read more about them on my blog. No, but there's a lot of stuff that .NET provides for us that helps protect some of these mashable items here, right, that we're starting to bring into our applications. So it's not like some of the other applications that are out there, right? I mean, all applications that allow us to bring more apps in have issues of, well, we supply other content, right? But now we're getting some of those built-in protections. Not to rave that .NET's the best. It is.
He had to say the .NET thing, didn't he?
I think Microsoft maybe did it.
We've I don't think so. So we've got three categories that things that problems with content fall into. And that's malware, server scripts, and client attacks, right? We have this idea that, well, what happens if I upload a Word doc that has malicious code in it, right? Does the SharePoint server scan it? Is there antivirus or anti-malware on the SharePoint server to stop that? And we actually find that a lot of pen testers forget to test that when we talk to them, when we start looking at things. Like, hey, did you upload something to the server to see if it stopped malware? Oh no, should I have? Yes. By the way, don't just upload malware, right? Oh, it's okay, it's slammer worm, it won't go anywhere. See if anybody notices. It'd be kind of fun. Nah.
On a tester.
On a test server, yeah. So you gotta check that. What about the server scripts?
Yeah, when we talk about server scripts, we have that ability, right, to start uploading scripts. Anybody here heard of Laudanum? That's weak. I'm embarrassed right now.
You should be.
It's an open source project that Kevin Johnson runs. But anyway, it's a collection of scripts that we can upload and gives us things like shells that we can access through web pages. So once we update this, we can now start interacting with the server, right? So we can take things like Laudanum and start updating and uploading scripts into the SharePoint server and then start gaining access to shells on the server, which is always fun. My favorite attack.
I don't know about my favorite attack.
Okay, maybe not.
Okay. Which does bring us to my favorite attack. Client attacks. Right? I believe that all of your users on your network are there to provide me access to your network. And happily, they accomplish that job very well, even if they don't do anything else for you. Right? And what we find is that SharePoint becomes a really good launching point. Because one, it allows us to put content into it. For example, I can upload an HTML document that has a beef hook in it to a SharePoint server. And then when somebody browses to it, what server did that beef hook come from? A SharePoint server, right?
There, yeah.
Yeah, theirs. So same origin isn't a problem, right? So we have that. And because these people have been trained to use the SharePoint server as this business engine, as this workflow, as this trusted area of serenity, Calgon take me away type advertisement, right? Is that they will run things and believe things that they normally wouldn't. And considering the fact that you can see a phishing email that it came from one bank, had a subject of another bank, and the body says a third bank, and people will still click it and give credentials for a fourth bank, right? The trust isn't that necessary, but it's nice, right? And we can actually run client-side code inside of what SharePoint is serving up, right? It's kind of fun, right?
So we've got a white paper that we put together to help talk about some of the common issues that we see within SharePoint, and then also outline some of the ways that we can start locking this down and protecting it a little bit. We're going to make this available. It'll be out on the SharePoint.professionallyevil.com site. I won't abbreviate it so that way they know. Yeah, they know where it is. Kevin likes to call it.
It's not there yet.
Yeah, I said it will be available.
Let's make that
Common English. Does anybody not speak English in here?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So it's not available yet, it will be there soon.
Our plan is when we get home from DerbyCon Sunday night, we'll get the server set up and everything built, and it'll be all there next week.
Are you posting that on
Am I hosting that on a SharePoint portal? Yes, yes, that's what we've done. As a matter of fact, just so you know, all of our client vulnerability reports, the details of the exploits we can pull away from them, and exactly how to pull those off are also in our SharePoint server.
Client list as well?
Right? Because we actually built a machine with 192 gigs of RAM and built Windows on it to crack passwords. Yes, I know exactly who you are, sir. But yeah, it is not on the SharePoint server. And it'll be online next week.
We should stand up to SharePoint server.
We should. How many people go to a SharePoint server hosted on a domain called professionalevil.com? Yeah, pretty much, right? Yeah, click that link, click it. So, now let's start talking about some of the current tools. It's so long.
Nobody likes to click on our stuff, I don't understand.
It's weird how they do all the time. Matter of fact, I'm going to tell you. So, you want to talk about clicking stuff? I was on the Mobile Security Summit that I hosted for SANS, which was a lot of fun. And we did it in Anaheim, and I'm there, and James was doing a social engineering test against one of our clients, and he actually built this site that was like, hey, come out here and give us your password, and we will tell you if it was compromised. Right? Yeah, awesome, right? So he sends me the link for me to review it.
No username, just password.
Just
to see if your password's been compromised, so you can change it if you need to.
Right. So I'm sitting there in the back of the summit, one of the speakers is up front, I'm checking my email real quick, right? And I see this email because internally we all send stuff back and forth to make sure it's okay before we ship it to the client, right? And so I look at it and I laugh because I giggle a lot in my job. And so I'm sitting next to somebody who will remain nameless, but he knows exactly who he is, right? And I'm like, dude, look at this, isn't this awesome? Right? And we had been talking about the fact that James was doing a social engineering test, right? Talking about the fact he was targeting clients. And I said, James built this, what do you think? He looks at me and goes, oh, that's awesome. And he starts typing away on his computer. And I look over, he's building an email to his entire pen test team, giving them the link to that server. And I said, what the hell are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm gonna send it out to them so they can try it out. Like, it's got an exploit on it. It's attacking clients. Don't go to that.
Yeah, and of course I was freaking out saying, please don't send anybody because I'm trying to track who goes to the site. Unbelievable.
It was bad.
It was just lucky enough that I had a domain sitting around that was perfect for that attack. So I was like, oh, I'll use this. Unbelievable. I love fishing.
Fishing is
And I don't like fish.
You don't like fish. With an F, though.
Yes.
Yeah. James is why we now ask during interviews, what food do you eat? But
I have to. I don't eat much. I'm not here to go to eat with. All right, so current tools, right? There are some current tools available. There's not many, unfortunately. You can do a search for them. You can find a couple out there. There are some that are specific to SharePoint. We'll talk about two of them in a moment. And then we also have some, most .NET tools will work. SharePoint is .NET for the most part. So any tools you're using against that, you can use for that. But they're limited. They don't work that well. They're not really built for the type of system that SharePoint is really set up as. Right, so there are a couple tools out there.
Yeah, one of the big things that causes problems for a lot of these tools is just the sheer amount of stuff in SharePoint, right? Most of these tools are tested against sites that have 100 pages, 200 pages, maybe 10 forms. Like a piss poor little web app that somebody read PHP in 21 seconds and became a web developer. But SharePoint, by its nature, can have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or whatever of pages and content and everything else like that. It just overwhelms a number of the tools that we work with, right?
So one of the projects that's out there is the SharePoint Hacking Diggity project. And as Kevin was trying to tell me about it a while back, he's like, yeah, it's the Share Diggity, and I couldn't find it anywhere. I'm like, what are you talking about? Right, it was created by Bishop Fox, which is also Stock and Lou. Rewind it, I'm pretty sure that's what I said. All right, it's a set of tools. They have multiple tools. They actually have 4 listed on their site, although 2 of them aren't available for download yet, but they are listed as being coming soon. But so the 2 that they do have is SharePoint to Google Diggity dictionary. So it gives an opportunity for you to, it's got an entire dictionary of all these different URLs that it's looking for different pages that exist within a SharePoint server. So you can send it out and have these requests all done and run them through Google and get all the results and start identifying where these pages are found. So you can do it that way. Another option that we have is the SharePoint URL root, where it's actually going to start going in. It uses forceful root attacks to be able to go in and try to identify a list of 101 different common admin pages that exist within the SharePoint server to see if they're available. So another good way where we can actually get in and start assessing the application without having to know all the different pages, because there are a lot of pages out there that exist that we just don't have off the top of our heads. Yeah, and the next one we have is Sparty. I love the little logo that they had for this. I was like, yeah, I gotta put this thing in here. That thing is great. It reminds me of the Catapult King, if anybody plays that on the iPad or iPhone. But it's those little guys. You play? Yeah.
Of course I play.
Of course you do.
Mike Barron.
He doesn't remind me much of Mike Barron.
You gotta mention Mike Barron.
Mike Barron. I mentioned it. All right, it was created by DJC. It's a SharePoint and front page assessment tool. So it's not just SharePoint related, which is kind of nice. It's written in Python, because what great app isn't written in Python? Okay. It's not an app, that's a tool.
Oh, okay.
I take that back. Some of the features, right, it'll go in and tell us what type of version of SharePoint that we're actually using. It'll go in and do permission checks for us. It'll help with the SharePoint services, if there's exposed SharePoint services that are available. It'll go in and start doing checks for that. And then, of course, the install file and access write checks that are available. What is this?
Point on that one, that's a Michigan State Spartan. That's the guy, he's a PhD student at MSU that created that.
Really?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much, sir. I did not know that. Did you know that?
No, I like the guy though. He's cool.
Yeah. So now you're a Michigan State guy?
No.
No, okay.
I'm close enough.
You're close enough. You're in Louisville.
I'm here at conference. I live north of Detroit where the weak are killed in Egypt.
This guy just announced his address. But,
Let's find me.
yeah, I know.
I found it.
This is right there. Earlier we went to pick up a box of professional evil stickers, and a lady at the front desk said, "Are you in a room?" And I'm like, "No." I knew she had checked in, and he says, "Yeah, this one."
I said, are you currently in a room? Yes, we're in this room.
Yeah. I just want to point out, this is what I hire. I don't know what the heck is going on, right?
That was much cleaner than where I thought you were going.
Yeah, oh, I know. Yeah. So, let's messed up. Yeah, well, you guys did get warned that a talk from us is just us making fun of each other, right? Yeah, pretty much.
Hey,
So,
at least it's just an hour. You could have sat through 2 days.
yeah. So let's talk about
I see a
SPScan.
couple people taking
Yeah,
it.
oh yeah. I put up those 2 jerks talking about themselves and each other. But so SPScan is a fork of WPScan. By Ryan Dewhurst, and I screwed up horribly, and I want to make it very clear that I screwed up. What we did was, we're busy, which is a good thing, right? As the CEO of the company, I like the fact that every one of my consultants is busy, and the company is growing, but we ran out of time. We started having problems getting the tools written, so what we decided to do was, because we had said, we're releasing this. And while, yes, we're well aware of the fact we pulled out of DEF-CON, that we still stand by why we did that, we didn't want to not release stuff. And so we hired a developer, we outsourced. And we paid a developer, and his name is Todd. And why I messed up so bad is, I don't even remember his last name. It's on my email, but I'm not going to pull my email up on the projector. But, Todd Siegel wrote it for us, and I told him that we were absolutely going to give him credit for doing this, and I forgot the bullet. So I don't want anybody like, oh man. But Todd wrote this for us. We designed it and gave him, here's what we want. He built the base of it, off of WPScan, which of course came from Ryan. And this will also be released next week. It is a tool designed around similar to WPScan. Matter of fact, almost identical to WPScan, right? Where what it does is it will fingerprint that it is a SharePoint server, but not only be able to tell you this is a SharePoint server, but it's actually going to go through and it has a list of known vulnerable web parts. And it will fingerprint the different, oh damn it, I did it again. It has known vulnerable SharePoint apps. Just when I say web parts, translate it, okay? But they should make Google Mouth instead of Google Glass, and then that way as I say things, I can say what I meant. It would be perfect, right? So, something. Of course, it'd be indexing it and giving it to the NSA. And it will tell you, hey, here are the SharePoint apps that are vulnerable to this, and this, so that you can then go and either exploit it if you're doing an actual pen test, or report it if you're just doing a vulnerability assessment. Yes, it's a pet peeve of mine that people still think that that's a debate, is what the difference is between a pen test and a vulnerability assessment. Jokes. So, and then everyone gives you what?
There is no difference.
Not when you do it. So, that's SPScan, which works out pretty well. Which then brings it, I'm undermining my own consultant. That's awful. Then we come
Say
into,
your logo goes on it, so.
yeah, you're right. The next one we're going to release is
The beef
the
buffet.
beef module.
The beef buffet. He named it.
Oh,
We're gonna
man.
stick to it.
When he wrote me and said, hey, are you working on the beef buffet? I'm like, the what? And he's like, well, that's what you called it. I'm like, no, I didn't. That's stupid. Who would possibly call it that? He said, no, that's what it says. I pull up the email I sent. Sure enough, that's what the document said. I insist somebody hacked me and edited that document.
And you autocorrect.
Damn you, that's it. It was autocorrect.
Be glad, because we actually had to update, because SPScan used to be called Fingerprint. At least we didn't have to say that multiple times.
I forgot that. But yeah, both of the tools had stupid ass names. But the beef module to be named the beef module formerly known as Prince.
The beef module, formerly known as buffet.
Yo, no.
Buffet.
Buffet. So the beef module, we all know what beef is, right? Ah, beef. Even vegetarians like beef. Vegans not so much, but they're weird. So, you know, it's what you do. So, it's a great tool. Wade Alcorn and the Beef Project team have done amazing work. It's focused on payload delivery via cross-site scripting attacks. We're releasing 4 new modules for this, right? What we're doing is get page HTML, get page links, get default content, and request user credentials. Now, the first 3 are pretty simple, right? Get page HTML, it returns the HTML of the page that the user is on when they got hooked. It's actually based on the get page HTML module that comes with Beef. We've just modified it to handle some of the SharePoint intricacies. The same exact thing with get page links. It's based on the get page links module that comes with Beef, yet it understands the oddities of the SharePoint display. The get default content actually has a list of the default pages we know of on that SharePoint server, or that could be on that SharePoint server. It reaches out, grabs them, and sends them to the person controlling the Beef server. And then finally, the last one is the request user credentials. And what it does is it basically displays, it defaces the web page to look like a Microsoft login box. And it says, hey, your session has timed out. Click here. Log in, and then it sends those credentials up to us on that Beef console. Make sense?
I don't really consider that a defacement, though.
No, I don't know what else to call it, right? It changes the page.
It's an injection. It's the same thing that all malware does on baking sites.
Exactly. Exactly.
But usually defacement means negative, and we don't negatize that.
We did. Say that.
I just want to say we didn't negatize that. I actually coined negatize in my class last week, where I was talking about changing money to negative values. And I said, you know, you have to make sure you negatize. And I was like, wait a minute, that's not going to work. And one of the students said, it is now. So we've been using it as much as possible.
Oh, yeah.
To really negatize. So please use it all over the place.
which brings us to the end, right? It's like cylinders, right? You guys know that the cloud is called the cloud because of the Visio diagram? So can we get people to start calling databases the cylinder?
It starts here today, folks.
So we love SharePoint, right? Everybody loves SharePoint. As attackers, we like it even more. When people tell us, as was introduced in the beginning, when people tell us they have SharePoint, we start to giggle before we text, right? And you have to know what this is. As we said at the very beginning, if you don't understand what SharePoint is, when you run across it as an attacker with permission, or if you're an internal team that is responsible for the security of your organization, if you don't have the tools available to you to assess that SharePoint server and understand what's going on, you're going to have a problem. So the tools are going to be released. SharePoint.professionaleval.com is where we're going to put out the white paper and SPScan, and then extensions.professionaleval.com is where the beef modules are going to be. That's a project Tom Docedel actually started with the Burp extension that he wrote. We're just adding to it with beef now, right? Which brings us, well, to that slide again. I don't know why that keeps
I'm sick of that slide. What happened? Who did this PowerPoint deck?
Damn wrong. But that's it. So are there any questions? We only have like a minute or two left. Are there any questions from anybody? Wow, that was easy. Oh, there's one.
Gentleman in the middle.
So a lot of your attacks talk about, obviously you're authenticating to the directory route or whatever, or you're attacking the client. Do you have any effective attacks against like a login interface for SharePoint that you don't know what that is?
I'm sorry. You're saying that we have an effective
Yeah,
attack?
you come across the SharePoint login interface.
Right.
Does it stop there because there's nothing to attack?
Oh no, there's lots of the content that's available for free. So I'm going to repeat the question. The question was, a lot of our talks talked about, attacks talked about you're authenticated, you have access to this. What about if you come across a login page? Well, a lot of the content in SharePoint doesn't require authentication, right? Or you're going to treat it the same way you would treat any other authentication field, brute force it, right? Be careful because it's tied to the domain and it will lock out accounts, okay? So let's break now. We'll be outside hanging around for the rest of the weekend and we will have stickers if we want them. Talk to you guys later.